Rabbi Tzvi Mandel of Congregation called Bnei Yisrael, community of Jewish friends, Zavar Zalazitz. Tonight is Tuesday night, Pashas Matas Masay. This Shabbos will be Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, very special Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. And we will begin with a story. Last week was the outside of the great Reb Shlomo Kalina, the Helike Kalina. The Kalina was killed al Kiddush Hashem by a Polish soldier by the name of Our Miles, Mach Shumai. And the Helike Kalina was a Talmid Chava, a student and a friend of Reb Aaron HaGadol of Kalina, the first Kalina Rebbe, who was also a student of the great Maggid. The Maggid was rich, and he too was a student of both. He was a student of both. And after his Rebbe was nifta, after Reb Aaron HaGadol was nifta, and after Mizritch Maggid was nifta, so a number of Chassidim wanted him to become a Rebbe, and he definitely did not want to be. And he was so convinced that he is such a big Russia, that he's so evil, such an evil person, that he said, you know what, we'll go together. I'll go together with Reb Manala, that was an uncle of Reb Aaron HaGadol. I'll go together with him to the great Rebbe Reb Mechel Tschuva, was one of the greatest students of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. And we'll see what he says. And the reason why he took along with him Reb Manala was Chassidim used to say one of two reasons. Either because he used to say he was so convinced that Reb Manala will be a witness to what Reb Mechel Tschuva says, and he was convinced that Reb Mechel Tschuva would say, you're such a Rasha, you should be a Rebbe. So if nobody wants to believe that that's what Reb Mechel Tschuva said, so now he has a witness. Or the reason why he took him along was because he was so convinced that Reb Mechel Tschuva will bawl him out so, and for even thinking that he should be a Rebbe, what's even the thought that he'll need someone to be mechazik him, someone to give him strength and to give him some positive energy, like they say. So that's why he took along Reb Manala with him. Of course, what happened was just the opposite. He came to the great Reb Mechel Tschuva, and he told him that Chassidim want me to become a Rebbe. What should I do? And when he was ready to get beaten up verbally, the great Reb Mechel Tschuva said, Reb Shlomo, how much longer are you going to sit by yourself in a room and worship Hashem? The world needs you. There are so many far-flung neshamas that are so far from everything. And they need a great tzaddik, because the further away a person is from Hashem, the greater the tzaddik can lower himself to bring that person out. And that's when he became Rebbe. When he became Rebbe, he had a bracha from Reb Mechel Tschuva, from the Maggid, that he'll be able to see from one side of the world to the other side. And this was not only true in a physical way, but also in all the worlds and in all situations. The following story explains it. A person once came to him for a bracha that he was very sick, and he needed a bracha that he should live. Simultaneously, another person came to him with needed a bracha that his wife was going to give birth. Actually, it was this guy's wife was going to give birth also. And he saw from one side of the world to the other, he saw that this person has to die, Nebuch, because this child has to carry his name and take on his neshama. And so he gave this person a bracha, and then he gave the bracha that the child should live and be well, and whatever it is. Many years later, this child, not many years later, a number of months later, she gave birth. And there was a big bris, and it was very joyous because the father had passed away. And there was this person by the bris. I mixed it up. Somehow it came out that this person by the bris was actually the father as a child. Oh, that's what it was. And he wanted to sit up front and get from the best food like a father. But really he was only a child, but he had the neshama of the father. So the father of the baby gave him a slap in the face. He got so angry. And he said he couldn't look at it. He couldn't see how a child slaps his father. Well, that was the real neshama of it. So he asked that this special present, this Ruach HaKodesh, should be taken away from him. And he wasn't able to see it. Sorry I botched up the story. But the first story is good. Anyway, so we're going to study now the duties of the heart, how one does Tschuva, Halavavos, Tschuva, and we're up to the 4th chapter. As I said, some of these things are easily understood and easily applicable. Others are maybe levels that we could hope or pray that we should be up to, but we don't get depressed or turned off or lost just because we can't do everything that it says over here. The point is to try our best to do the things that we can in a practical way, and the other things to look up to them and to be able to grow in them. And like I said last year, I think we learned this over 3 times before Yom Kippur, 3 times over, because this is a short version of the Halavavos someone put together. And we'll try to do the same this year, and that way we'll, Be'ezah Hashem, be able to do Tschuva b'simcha and in a practical way and in a real way, and will make us feel like different people like never before, different Jews. Joyous and practical Yidden to worship Hashem. 4th chapter. There are 4 fundamental things about Tschuva. One who sins to his friend, let's say, so he forgives him for his sin with 4 conditions. Number 1, he wants to see that you actually regret about what you did to him. Number 2, once you do regret, he shouldn't keep on doing the bad things that you have done to him. Number 3, he wants to make sure that the sinner begs him for forgiveness with his whole heart, not just half-heartedly. And number 4, that he takes upon himself not to do this again. Hashem, the Creator, in His infinite wisdom, also goes along these lines. However, in these 4 conditions, there are 5 ikrei pratim, the way he calls, 5 intricacies that are very important to know as well. The regret, the true regret that he has, can only be considered true regret if it follows these 5 steps. First of all, that he has fear, and he has a real fear, knowing and being cognizant of who Hashem is. So the fear is very real that he might get punished because of what he did. That's called real Yiras HaEinish. Yiras HaEinish is something that we don't play around with, because though, especially by Chassidim, we don't talk so much about it because we have to be b'simcha, and whatever we do, we have to be joyous. But has to be. It's one of the 13 fundamental belief steps in Yiddishkeit that the Rambam put together. I believe with full belief that Hashem punishes and Hashem rewards. It's true that Hashem rewards for great things and for even the smallest thing, but the same thing also Hashem punishes. So we have to know and we have to be cognizant that Hashem actually does punish, God forbid. Number two, as a result of this punishment, one has a broken heart and is humble to the Holy One, blessed be He, because of the sins that he did. Number three, that a person shows signs of regret both in his speech, in what he eats, in what he wears, and in all his movements. Okay, what does this mean exactly? Each of these things stands for something else that regret is all about. Sometimes one can do tshuva and do everything, but his speech is like a prosta person, like a lowly person, like a person that doesn't have yiras shamayim, whether it's street speech, whether it's just not respectable for a yid who is a prince or a princess. So the speech has to change. Other parts of us that would not show that we regret what we did is eating, whether a person eats like a slob and slurps and doesn't have derchetz and respect for others, man to man, or whether a person eats like an animal eats, just running after his natural instinct of wanting to eat anything and everything, and that's also wrong. His malbish, the way he dresses, also has to do whether it's tznius in a very simple, practical manner. There are laws of halachic laws how a woman has to dress and how a man has to dress as well. Or whether it's, in general, not respectable enough. And B'chol T'nuosav means in all his mannerisms, there has to be a certain amount of humble and batul to Hashem while he regrets doing what he did. Number 4, and this is even harder for our generation, one should cry when he regrets on his sins. Haven't seen it yet in our generation, probably. But in the older generation, I remember elderly people, when I was a child, would bawl crying, doing tshuva, whether it's Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, or whether even other times, especially sadly enough, it was after the war. Maybe one might say that they were crying about what they saw, what they witnessed, perhaps their mother being killed in front of them, their children, their wives, people from the city that they came from. Should never happen anymore to anyone. And number 5 is that a person really has to rebuke himself. There's no one else that's going to rebuke a person better than he could rebuke himself. And the rebuke has to be how one feels that he didn't fulfill his purpose in worshiping the Creator. And this is something that every person, according to his neshama, has to be able to do to himself. There's no one else, no teacher, no rebbe, no other person better than he himself, who knows himself. That's in the charata part, in the regret part. We'll stop here. So we're in the middle of the 5th chapter. Have a good night.